Hello, everyone. We still have some people coming in. We're going to start in about 1 minute. But welcome. Okay, still have some people coming on board. We're going to be starting in about 30 seconds from now. Welcome, everyone. Good to see you. Great. Hi, my name is Brian McDonald, and I'm Director of Client Relations for Anjali Education Consultants. And I'd like to welcome everyone to the webinar today, where for the next 20 minutes, we will be sharing our key insights and best tactics for college admissions. Then we're going to quickly give you a couple of options if you'd like to meet with us privately to discuss how we might help your individual situation. And then the balance of the time is for your questions. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the president of Anjali Education Consultants, Anjali Maazel. Anjali is a former Princeton University interviewer, TED Talk speaker, and college admissions expert. She is also the very proud mother of a thriving 24-year-old now in grad school. And Anjali has helped hundreds of students get into their top perfect match schools, including Yale and Stanford, Johns Hopkins, and Vanderbilt, Swarthmore, and UT Austin, just to name a few. Okay, thanks again for being here today, and it's over to you, Anjali.
Thank you, Brian. Hi, everyone. So glad to be with you today. Many of you I know are here because you can clearly see that applying to college has become much more challenging. And many of you are probably feeling some combination of excitement and anxiety. So let me first begin by just acknowledging that I truly understand these feelings as a parent and as a professional. And by the end of this talk today, after I outline the specific challenges and solutions, I really think you're going to feel not only much more clear and in control of the process, but also confident and aligned with what you truly want. Okay, so I'd like to start by telling you a brief story. I grew up in New York City, and I went to an extremely competitive high school. And just to give you an idea, I had about 5 to 6 hours of homework almost every night, and really felt oppressed by this kind of system. I did really well despite that, but I couldn't wait to get out and go to college. My senior year in high school was truly bizarre. This is for you. You may not have heard this type of story before, but it is true. My classmates and their parents got together and offered me cash to withdraw my applications after I was admitted early to Yale. Apart from the really unsettling feeling that this gave me, I had not really decided if I wanted to attend that school. And I wanted to see which other options would open up for me in the spring. As it turned out, I ended up not going to Yale, but to Princeton instead. But this experience left me feeling very ill at ease. And so when planning my own son's education, I was determined that he would not suffer the crushing, toxic academic atmosphere that I had endured. And I really didn't feel that served me in the long run. So I wanted my son to be happy, first and foremost, and also successful, but how to strike the right balance. So the difficulty started with choosing a high school for him. We went back and forth between competitive, well-known prep schools and a small unknown school that prioritized love of learning and independent projects. I realized that either way, there would be trade-offs, but in the end, I chose the small school where my son found his passion. Given that I had been an interviewer for many years for Princeton, as well as a teacher who wrote letters of recommendation and gave college essay guidance, you would think that it would have been easy for me to guide my son through his college applications, right? Not true. So I hired a colleague to work with him. And after many months after the end of a surprisingly complex process, he got into an Ivy League school. But that is not what he chose. He made what some of you might think was a very unexpected choice. And I'll tell you about it at the end of the webinar. So what I wanted you to know to start with is that I have been where you are. Although I knew the system well, when my son applied to college, I had complicated feelings. Like many parents, I was vulnerable to fear, confusion, frustration. But I did learn something important. I discovered that my son, like all of you here today, was facing a threefold problem when applying to college. Number one, increased competition. Number two, complexity of the application process. And number three, the rising cost of college. Now, what does this look like in practice? First, let's look at the competitiveness of college admissions. If you were a Texas student in the 90s and graduated in the top 20% of your class, you were automatically admitted to the University of Texas, Austin. Today, you'll need to graduate in the top 6% of your class. If you were applying to Yale in the 90s, you had an 18% chance of admission. Now it's under 5%. And 70% of USC applicants were admitted in the 90s, but in 2022, it's now under 12%. And maybe you read a recent Wall Street Journal article about a young woman who, with an SAT score of 1550, a GPA of 3.95, phenomenal extracurricular activities and leadership positions. She applied to top-tier schools and shockingly was admitted to none of them. So there's no doubt that college admissions today is super competitive. Now let's look at the complexity of the application process. 20 years ago, you might have applied to one or two colleges and the process was clear, simple, and straightforward. And now, because of the many moving parts of the applications, students are applying to many more colleges, as many as 8 to 15 for my students. So there's a lot to stay on top of. And to give you a glimpse into the complexity, take a look at all the elements that need to be in place for students to have optimal merit scholarship and admission results. So we're not going to go into great detail, but you see that there are many things that we do between the first meeting and the end, or between the start of your application process and the end, to be sure that you have maximized your chances of admission and scholarships. Recently, a friend of mine was telling me about the ordeal of helping his son apply to college. The numbers of different essays for each college, the completely different online applications to fill in, SAT prep, coordinating with his school to send letters of recommendation, different deadlines, additional applications, recommendations for honors programs, and a lot more. All of this was a ton of work and created months of tension with his son. So clearly, this complexity needs to be simplified. So remember, we're looking at that threefold problem. After the competitiveness and complexity of the college admissions process, the fact is college has become incredibly expensive. If you'll please look at this graph and brace yourself, this truly illustrates how the cost of college tuition has exploded. The red line here at the bottom is the rate of inflation. And as you can see, the black line at the top is the rate of increase in college tuition. So clearly, college tuition has massively outpaced inflation for decades now. And private colleges can cost up to $77,000 per year, while in-state tuition for public schools can cost up to $28,000 per year. But here is the good news. Merit scholarships can be worth tens of thousands of dollars and even hundreds of thousands of dollars. So how do we get them? Well, here are three quick success stories which illustrate how we guide students and how you can guide yourself to gain a competitive edge, simplify the complexity, and maximize scholarships to reduce costs. So let's start with Tony. When we began working together early in 10th grade, Tony had high A's and an SAT score in the mid 1500s. He was stellar in math, So naturally, his family and his teachers were pushing him toward engineering. But after talking with Tony, he made it really clear that engineering was not what he wanted. However, and this was the game changer, we helped him discover that he had a significant talent and passion in art as well as STEM. So we matched him to a local art mentor and a summer program to develop a portfolio. That portfolio he could then include in his applications. Exploring his interest in visual arts and combining this with his talent in math led Tony to discover a passion for architecture. And this discovery made all the difference because it made Tony really stand out. Why? Because now Tony had a story to tell. And nothing will make you stand out from the crowd more than having your own story that demonstrates genuine passion and growth. So to summarize, Tony discovered his passion. We simplified the application process, guiding him to a clear major and career path he loved, architecture. And Tony secured a $100,000 scholarship to Tulane. And finally, by curating his art portfolio, and targeting his essays to align with architecture and his new vision for himself, Tony found a competitive edge. The result is that he was admitted to Rice, his first choice, where he has now finished a successful freshman year. In this way, Tony solved the threefold problem of college admissions. But not all of us are straight A students like Tony. Many of us get A's and B's. We might have a down year, get sick, or be in a competitive high school, but we're still ambitious. This was Ellen. Ellen had a B average from a competitive high school, but was confident about thriving in a selective college. We discovered that her GPA had significantly increased over the 3 years of high school through her hard work, the first 3 years of high school. And when she got B's, it motivated her to get tutoring and find a college professor as a mentor. And she kept signing up for those challenging classes, even though it was difficult. She also rose to a leadership position in yearbook and got a summer internship in a startup incubator to explore a major in business. But how was she going to pull all these threads together to show her accomplishments? Ellen worked to tell her story in a compelling way. This was the most important part of the process. She demonstrated through her essays and applications how she learned from setbacks and how these setbacks led her to develop and improve. In fact, they became assets. Maybe your child or you are like Ellen. You discovered a specific passion halfway through high school. Maybe you began to excel by the end of junior year, or maybe you're a straight A student who has a clear major in mind from the beginning. Either way, you may not recognize what is exceptional about you, but everybody has a powerful story to tell. You need to tell your story in a memorable way. Your passions, your challenges, your successes, and how they all fit together. So to summarize, for Ellen, she simplified the application process by keeping accountable and breaking down the long list of tasks into small steps. She submitted standout applications and eventually received 12 scholarship offers ranging from $20,000 to $100,000. And she gained a competitive edge by pulling all her academic and extracurricular experiences together into a story that was authentic and powerful in her essays, in her interviews, so that despite her GPA, she was admitted as a business major, very competitive program at Emory University, her first choice. So Ellen solved the threefold problem of college admissions. Now, Grace's story is slightly different. She had a mixture of A's and B's and a remarkable singing talent she needed to showcase. So what was the solution to the threefold problem of college admissions for Grace? First, simplify the process by keeping herself organized and on task through spreadsheets and an application tracking system. Second, keep costs down by optimizing all aspects of the applications and tailoring the college list in Grace's case. And in her case, she was awarded scholarships ranging from $80,000 to $199,000. And third, as Grace was a singer, she gained a competitive edge by curating her vocal submission and getting admitted to the super selective Grammy camp. And in the end, she was accepted at her first choice college, the very prestigious California Institute of the Arts, also known as CalArts. So the three students we discussed, Tony, Ellen, and Grace, they're all success stories, but very different one from another. Yet for all of these students, they solved the problems of competitiveness, complexity, and cost of college. Through these case studies, we really hope you've gotten some sense and some tips about what to prioritize in college planning. And before we answer your questions, which is going to be the majority of the time of this presentation, it's going to be for you. Let's first answer the most common question, which is how you guys can work with us. And before we give you the three simple options, here is our track record. So for our 2022 application cycle, our students have received over $2 million in scholarships, and the average total scholarships per student that they received, when you add up all their four-year scholarships per student, was $182,000. So the return on investment our families have experienced has been very high, and our fees have been paid for many times over. And in terms of acceptances in the same applications cycle, students we worked with were admitted to some of the most selective colleges in the country, including Stanford, Dartmouth, University of Pennsylvania, Johns Hopkins, as well as excellent schools such as UC Riverside, Penn State, Ohio State, Texas A&M, Case Western, and many more. And best of all, these acceptances were also the right fit for each applicant. We really made sure of that. So if you want to gain a competitive edge, simplify the application process and keep costs down, like the hundreds of students we've helped ace college admissions, here are the three simple options. Option one is for 8th to 10th grades with the one-year early talent development packages. In this one, you really have a chance to, we have a chance to identify, we have the time to really zero in on your kids' talents, discover their passions, and make sure they get on track. This option also maximizes admissions and scholarships results when they apply to college. We will help optimize their GPA, test scores, extracurriculars, and summer planning. And packages start at $19.97. Option two is for 11th to 12th grade students, our 2-year A-list package. This one is our most popular package. It'll give you a competitive edge, simplify the complex application process, and keep costs low. We will help optimize essays, SAT prep, and testing, as well as summer planning and demonstrated interest. This A-list package, you're working directly with me, and it costs $19.97. We can provide some level of customization based on your situation. And then there are also for 11th to 12th grade students, if you do not work with me, but you work with one of the counselors that we have carefully selected and trained, the same package costs $79.97. And if you're serious about working with us, please do sign up for one of our free discovery sessions. Bring your questions, and students, please have parents with you. Parents, please bring your spouse. Leslie, our moderator, is going to be kind enough to please paste that link to sign up for the free discovery session. And we're going to put it in again a little bit later. Again, this session is designed to explore our packages, and answer your specific questions. And students, please bring your parents. So sign up for when they can attend. Parents, please bring your spouse. If your questions are more general, you can certainly reach out to us by email, and we will do our best. But before I answer your questions today, I want to finish the story about my son that I started at the very beginning of this webinar. So at the end of his application process, as I mentioned, he did in fact get into an Ivy League school, but that is not what he chose. Instead, he did a lot of research. And after that research and investigation and deep reflection and visiting the schools, my son chose an amazing option, Carleton College in Minnesota, which you may or may not have heard of, but it turns out employers, graduate programs, and prestigious fellowship boards know very well. It was by far a better choice for him than the Ivy. At Carleton, my son got more attention, classes were more targeted, his professors advocated for him. He stood out, and after his freshman year, he was awarded the Orion Mission internship at NASA and a second Orion Mission internship at NASA the following summer between his sophomore and junior year in college. Today, he's in graduate school at an Ivy League and tells me that in retrospect, although some disagreed with his college choice, it was absolutely the right one for him. And best of all for me as a mom, he's happy and thriving. So parents and students, you may be anxious right now. I totally understand, but I can promise you that there are many roads to success. And remember that college is not a destination. The college application process can help you begin to discover a sense of what really matters to you. Sometimes we call that purpose, or we call it our values or our sense of mission. In any case, it's a great first step in designing a life of meaning and financial stability. And that's what I wish for all of you from the bottom of my heart. So wonderful. And so before we get started with the Q&A, Leslie, could you paste the link for that free discovery session if you guys are interested, for those of you who are interested, serious about working with us. Wonderful. So yes, I'm going to now just take a look at those questions that you have. And give me 1 second. I'm trying to get my contact info up for you as well. Wonderful. Okay. So don't be shy, get your questions in here, get them, because you can get them answered, and you will be glad you did. So a question about when to start applying to college. So there are two aspects, right? There's college planning and there's college applications. Typically, college planning can start as early as 8th grade, 9th grade, right? 10th grade, of course. And there's a planning component in the 11th grade as well. But the way we work with our students is we have students start working on we get them a college list by December of their junior year, generally speaking. We help them plan for the summer, and then we help students work on college essays beginning in January of their junior year through the spring and summer. And then a big focus of the application process is August, because August 1st, the applications are updated. And then what we recommend generally is for students to apply closer to when the applications open than when they close. You know, sometimes we think of deadlines as the goal, and we're kind of basing everything on the college deadline. We work a little differently because we want to optimize the students' chances of admission and scholarship. Scholarships are often for schools that work on a first come, first served basis, which is called rolling admissions. Colleges will be allocating those scholarships a little at a time. So the earlier, the better. Now, there are some colleges that will not make admissions decisions until all the applications have been received. Generally, those are the super selective colleges. However, we also recommend that students apply relatively early, if possible, to those for several reasons. So, you know, what you don't want is you don't want to be juggling applications, college essays. Just to give you an idea, if you apply to 10 colleges, which is kind of the average of our students these days, if you apply to 10 colleges, you might have anywhere from, you know, kind of 8 to 10 to 35 or 40 essays. So, you know, not all of them are long. Some of them are 150 words, 100 words, 250 words. But the point is, you know, those 100 and 150 words, you have to make them count, right? Especially if it's very selective schools. So we want you not to have to stress senior year. Now, if you're a senior right now, don't worry. There's always a way, right? You know, there are colleges that are less selective that have admission deadlines in, you know, February, March, April, and even through May and June. So I don't want seniors to be kind of, you know, incredibly worried. However, if you have started the process earlier, what we do with our students is we have most of the work done by the end of August, so right before senior year, and then during August and September, we have students submit the applications. Some of the applications don't open until October. That's okay, because you can work on the essays before October. So what you want is to make sure that this process is going to be beneficial to you. And we're not only talking strategy here, right? Remember that it's just as important for the application and planning process to help give you clarity about the direction you want to go in, what is important to you in terms of school, what kinds of environments you do best in. If financial considerations are very important for your family, the advanced planning will give you a longer runway. And with less stress and more time, you will probably submit better essays and applications and therefore get better results. So there are so many reasons why it is beneficial to take a little bit of time and do think ahead. That timeline that I showed you, you know, the kind of more intense work that we have students do begins in junior year. But we space it out so it's not kind of crammed in there at the last minute. This also gives you a chance to visit colleges. You know, if you have a chance to travel and go to some of the campuses, doesn't mean you have to, you know, visit every college. And if you can't, that's okay. There are great virtual information sessions and virtual tours. So there are many options. I hope that was a long answer to your question, but I think it's a more of a complex issue than we sometimes give it credit for. The planning, the timeline is so very important. So another question from Alexandria: how can I make out-of-state college affordable? Yes, so perfect. That is what we help students do. And this is what you can do as well, whether you work with us or not, is to in order to keep costs down, you want to maximize merit scholarships. If you qualify for need-based aid based on family income, that's fine, that's great. But if you do not, many families, kind of middle income families, do not necessarily qualify for that need-based financial aid, there are merit scholarships that will depend on several things. They'll depend on your grades, okay? You're asking how to make out-of-state college affordable. Do really well in high school, that will help. If you understand early or relatively early, whenever that is, whether it's freshman, sophomore, junior year, whenever it is, what you think your major is going to be. Try to align your extracurriculars to support that, because when you tell your story, you want that story, the narrative about what you've done in high school, to be super compelling in the sense that it's, the more it fits together, the better it is. Now, that's not to say, for example, if you have many different interests, that can be wonderful too. So like if you have, an interest, if you're a dancer and you do that, and then you also love debate and you also love this other thing, don't think everything has to be aligned to your major exactly. But what I'm trying to say is that there are certain slots of time that are really important to make decisions about, like what you're going to do over the summer, which clubs you're going to do, right? The more thought you put into it in terms of where you're headed, the better your kind of the connections between the things you're doing are going to be clearer to you. And then when you tell your story in the essays, in the interviews, the way you present your resume, even the major that you select when you apply, all of those things are then going to, it's going to all make sense to the admissions reader and then that will help you get those merit scholarships. So some merit scholarships are just academic. Many of the merit scholarships have a combination of things like leadership and grades, right? So leadership positions are wonderful if you can. There are many different ways to lead. If you look up leadership styles, you'll see that it's not all about being the president of this or the director of that. Sometimes leadership can be by example. Sometimes you're more of a creative type and you're taking an initiative to create something for your school. I don't know, to raise money for one of your sports teams. So there are all sorts of different kinds of leadership. The way we work with students and the way you can help yourself is by identifying your talents and identifying your passions, because there's a sweet spot between talent and passion, or another way of saying that is between what you love and what you're really good at. There's this kind of sweet spot intersection. The more you can focus on that, and a lot of the merit scholarships have to do with service, right? So often students will ask us, should I be volunteering more? The point isn't volunteering just to volunteer. The point is using those talents and using those skills, what you love and what you're good at, to benefit your community. So in all these different ways, you're saying, how can you make out-of-state applications or tuition more affordable? All of these ways. That's why planning is important wherever possible. Now, if you're a junior right now, you still have plenty of time, because you still have the important decision to make about next summer and how it's going to fit in to the rest of what you've done in high school. So you still have a great opportunity, to shape the building blocks of your story. And very important, make sure that what you're doing is something that's really meaningful to you. Do not try to outguess the admissions committees and try to figure out, what do they want? Let me do what they want. That doesn't work, because what they want is students who are genuine, who are passionate about what they do. It's less important in a way what you do, and it's more important that it really align with who you are and what matters to you. So take the time to get to know yourself. That's why self-reflection, we have a self-reflection component of our process. It's so important, not only for your well-being, for your sense of feeling good about what you're doing in your free time, or even the classes you're choosing, but also because it makes for a very compelling story at the end, and therefore is a very good strategy from the college admissions and scholarships point of view. Okay. How formal, for Mia, how formal or casual should you be when applying and writing essays? That's a very good question. I mean, all your questions have been great so far. So that's a great, yeah. So this is the thing. You want to communicate with admissions in a way that demonstrates respect, right? And understanding that this is an important part of your life. So I wouldn't send emails without capital letters or punctuation. I wouldn't write admissions as if you were texting. I've seen students, think that that's going to fly, and it's not a great idea, right? It doesn't mean that you have to be artificial, but cleaned up a grammar, punctuation, capitalization, and sentences that flow and that are just, genuine, but not super casual, for that kind of communication. For your essays, generally speaking, the same thing holds. Now, there are one or two exceptions. If you're writing a personal statement, for example, your Common App essay or another essay, or sometimes even a creative prompt, and they're wanting you to bend the rules, or they're giving you permission, let's put it that way, permission to bend the rules, then if the topic of your essay warrants it, if it makes sense, then, there might be some aspects that'll be like stream of consciousness, or it'll be like a poem, and you'll have a little bit more creative flexibility, but only if it really makes sense with the prompt and the way that you're answering that prompt. And then, in terms of something like interviews, when you go to a college interview, you don't have to, if you're wearing a suit, you don't have to wear a tie. If you're wearing, a dress, you don't have to dress up, or you don't have to wear a suit. What you want is just to be groomed and comfortable, generally groomed and casual. You just, that's kind of, it doesn't have to be more complicated than that. Okay, when are most scholarship applications due, or does it just vary? Any tips for them? I answered about the tips about the scholarships in my previous answer in great depth. So I hope that was helpful. Now, when are they due? Some of the scholarships are due in October and November. Some of them, many of them have a December 1st deadline. Some of them have mid-December, and some of them have January and February deadlines, sometimes even March. So it really depends on the school. But this is the thing. They unfortunately, it's there if you look for it, but they're probably not going to advertise it. It's not going to be pasted all over your application. Be sure to remember the deadline for the scholarship. No. And sometimes the scholarships are not even on the Common App, which is the main application for a lot of colleges. You have to go to the college website and you have to check, do I qualify for this scholarship? If so, what's the deadline? And do I have to fill in a separate application? Or are they going to consider me automatically when I submit my regular college application to that college? So that's for the college sponsored applications. And those are often the big ticket ones. Not always, but they're often the bigger ticket ones. There are also third-party scholarships. So, just to give you a very basic example, niche.com will offer, $1,000 if you apply for a scholarship, and another organization may offer you $1,000. And there are clearinghouses for those kinds of scholarships that places like fastweb.com or scholarships.com, et cetera. There are many of them. What I generally recommend is that you not engage in that until you've ascertained, until you're sure that your college is not going to start discounting their grants by the amount that you got from the third party. So if a college gives you $10,000 a year and they say, well, you got $2,000 from niche.com, so now we're going to offer you $8,000 a year. So that you have to find out college by college. Sometimes they have thresholds. Sometimes they'll spell it out right on the website, and other times you have to email them to ask them. Once you know that, then you can decide how much time to spend on those third-party scholarships. So generally, that's another reason to submit your applications kind of on the early side, because let's say you're done by whatever, September 1st of your senior year. Then you can spend the rest of the time, once you know those policies for the schools that you're applying to. Yeah, if they don't take away your grant money, if they just add it on, you can start applying to those. And there's a wide array. So I hope that has clarified to some extent. Okay. Kirtana, how long does the college application process take? So again, let's separate college planning from college application. Planning is putting all those building blocks, choosing your classes, all of that through high school, all of that. The application, where you're filling in the application, you're writing the essays, ideally, we like that to happen over several months. Again, we start with the essays generally in the spring or late winter of the junior year, and then take a break because students have APs and things like that, and then start again, and certainly in August. So, you could decide to give yourself August between junior and senior year as your kind of main application boot camp to fill in the applications, because that's when, after the August 1st is when they will have changed and updated. But the essays you want to be writing before, because it's a lot of work, and you want also to write the best quality that you're capable of. That's what we do with our students. Okay. Websites for scholarships. Yes, I mentioned before, fastweb.com, scholarships.com, and many others. Okay. There are always new ones popping up that have better or worse track records. So you can check that carefully on the internet, because it's a moving target, Question. I'm at a community college. Samantha, I was wondering, do you strongly advise foundation scholarship applications? Applying for only scholarships is best for college students? Yeah, you need to check with your two things, with your community college, to find out which ones you are qualified for and that you could apply to. And then if you're transferring out of community college to a four-year college, and you know which colleges you are applying to, then I would contact the financial aid offices of those colleges and find out again, are you eligible, and which ones are you eligible for? There are always solutions, but I would I would narrow it down by focusing on the ones that really are appropriate for you, where you are specifically. Okay. How do I find scholarships, Alexandria, that aren't through a college? I've mentioned this before. The websites, there are clearinghouses, those clearinghouses. What is the best way to go about getting scholarships? All of the things I've been talking about and all of the case studies that we went over today. Basically, you want to strengthen your profile, get the best grades you can, but remember that you want to align what you're doing with what matters to you, instead of trying to figure out what they want. Okay. Do you have any advice on how to write a good application essay, from Gabrielle? I know I have a story, but I struggle putting it into words sometimes. I'm a junior, so I have little time, but I want to get everything figured out before senior year. Good for you, Gabrielle. That is a good plan. You may not figure it all out, but if you can get a real head start, that would be fantastic. What you want to do is try to understand what the function of the essays is. Remember that your application is like a mosaic, right? You've got the grades, which are on the transcripts. You're going to have your test scores, or if you're applying test optional, you're not going to send your test scores in. You're going to have your letters of recommendation. You're going to have the majors that you choose, and some of those questions that the colleges ask that are not essays. So there's going to be a lot of different pieces, and then the essays, maybe interviews. The thing to keep in mind is that essays are giving the admission readers insight into your strengths, into your challenges, how you've faced and overcome challenges. It's very important, if there are specific challenges you have overcome, to mention those, because remember what they're seeing without the essays. All they see is those pieces, remember. So the essays have to add something new. Do not repeat what is in your list of activities that they're going to have. So they're going to have your list of activities, your transcript, your letters of recommendation, maybe test scores. You want to explain, right? At the same time, and certainly for the main essay, the personal statement, but possibly for as many of them as you can, you also want to hook the reader in. So you want to make these essays fun to read. Now, fun to read, sometimes the topics are not fun, right? We know that sometimes challenges are really, really hard in life. And I don't mean by fun to read that it's necessarily funny. What I mean is that when you are hooked into a story, it's because, think about it, when are you hooked into a book? It's when you really start to understand the characters, right? It's an insight into who these people are. That's what you need to give admissions readers, but in a way that's going to be entertaining. Don't just write a first draft and send it in. No, you're going to, when we work with students, we have a real step-by-step process that starts with brainstorming. And we help the student choose the topic, for example, for the personal statement, that is really going to share with admission readers something valuable that is not present in the other elements of the application. Sometimes there are talents. If you look at those Common App topics, sometimes it'll be you have a talent, or you have an area that's fascinating to you and you lose track of time, or there's a realization that led to a period of growth. I mean, there are all sorts of different topics. There's even one this year about what are you grateful for, and tell us why, and something like that. So there are many opportunities, but what we want is for it to really be something that matters to you and that you really want to write about. Now, in terms of the mechanics of writing, there is a lot to say, right? The main mistakes that students make are that they try to tell instead of showing. You have to show, not tell. So as much sensory detail as you can, if you're telling a story, what it felt like, what, all the senses, the smell, the taste, the feeling, the, all the senses. And so that draws the reader into the story. Another common mistake is repeating yourself. Look over your draft, make sure that each sentence adds something new. Another common mistake is not giving any examples, telling a story in general statements. I love history because I'm fascinated with politics in ancient times. I'm also interested in politics now. That's great, but where are the examples, right? Back up every statement you make with an example. You can write an outline that's statement, example, statement, example. I'm not saying everybody should do that, but what I'm saying is these are some of the common mistakes. And if it's a YS essay, why do you want to apply to our college? Make sure you've done your homework. Be specific. Don't just talk about, I've always dreamt of being, a tiger and, or whatever the mascot is. And I love the campus, and, be very specific. Look up the things. Make sure you have something academic, something social, something community oriented, as specific as possible. So I hope that's been helpful. Okay. How does my son focus on extracurriculars when homework takes up to 3 to 4 hours a day? Is that considered by the colleges when they look at admissions? Naren, very good question. This is the thing. Colleges, if your son is going to a school that is well known by universities, if your son's school has a track record of having students go to different colleges and colleges that you're happy with, then what that means is that they know the rigor of your son's curriculum, right? Rigor of the classes is one of the ways that colleges try to make sense of grades, because an A in a very tough course is not equivalent to an A in a course that is not as hard, right? It's not the same thing. And if the high school has a track record, then the college, with college admissions, then the colleges know that. So yeah, yes, that is going to play into it for sure. I can't give you a generic answer, unfortunately, because I don't know your son. I don't know why is he, is there a reason he's spending 3-4 hours? The whole context, I don't know. And I don't give generic advice, right? I've given tips, right? But without knowing your son, without knowing his school, without knowing the whole, what he's been doing over the last few years and the summers, I really can't give an advice about that. I'm happy to connect offline if that's something that interests you. But from the rigor point of view, I think I've answered your question. Okay. Did Tony in the case study, this is Jason, get any awards in architecture prior to his college application? Yeah, good question. So Tony did not get any awards in architecture. He had no architecture experience, and undergraduate architecture programs, for the most part, do not require architecture experience. What was interesting, though, is that his art portfolio showed he had some 3D pieces because he was interested, he was just genuinely interested in creating pieces. So he had a lamp that was a 3D, it was like a circular lamp that was, it has his face on it, and it was like a self-portrait, but it was a lamp. It was very interesting. And then he had another 3D piece of art where there was a construction of something. And even his line drawings and his paintings, there was an architectural element. So it's kind of like the portfolio itself spoke without him even having to do that. The other thing is that he wrote his essays all about his relationship to a community building when he was growing up and what it meant to him, and how important it was to his neighborhood. He connected it really beautifully, his kind of the things that matter to him with architecture topics. So it was not an award, but it was the way that he presented both his portfolio and his essays. Okay, is option 2 a good idea to complete courses in the summer? Is it a good use of time? Naren, option 2. I'm not sure if you mean option 2 in our list of services, Naren. I'm not sure. But I think, yes, we help students with all summer planning. We help students with all summer planning, whether they're in 8th, 9th, 10th, or 11th grades. So it's an important decision what you guys, what students do with their free time and with their summers. It can make a difference. We don't want students to be scheduled to the hilt. We want them to take time, downtime and schedule breaks. That's really important, right? We're not talking about more. We're talking about protecting the students' well-being, but being smart about those choices at the same time. And I see another question from Naren. It was 1997. Yes, around 1900, not per month. It's per school year for the lower grades. You said 1900 per month. No, it's per the school year for one school year, 1997. Okay. Jill, what is the best source for finding scholarships for high achieving students? Someone who had a focus such as karate, weightlifting. Okay. The first source for scholarships, I'll say it again, is we definitely want you to focus on the college-based scholarships. Those are the most going to be the higher ticket ones. For the most part, there, again, please remember there are exceptions. There are organizations that offer even full scholarships, right? For super low, for low income students, look into a program called Quest Bridge. That is not, that is for low income students. For kind of middle income or higher income students, the way to go is merit scholarships. And that's, what is the best source? First, the college list, then the college websites, right? You can even find there are lists of colleges that offer full rides, right? For high achieving students. In terms of karate and weightlifting, I'm not even sure what your question is. So again, I would have to work with, I'd have to get to know your child and to really understand, because I'm not even sure what your question is. Okay. How do you start working on essays in advance of applying? How do you know what questions will be? Very good question. That's a very practical question. Create your Common App account. Put a list of colleges that you want in there. And in the questions, once you fill out the main profile, which will not change in August, so you can fill that out. If you're a junior, you can fill it out. In the college specific questions under My Colleges, you'll have the essays. You have to look at each section until you find them. And sometimes they only pop out when you put your major in there. Now, some of the essays change in August, but we still have kids work on them early because it's only a small percentage that where the prompts change. So that's one of the best sources to find. Can these groups help apply to out-of-state colleges? Can these groups? I'm not sure what you mean by groups, but if you're talking about if we can help your child apply or to you to apply to out-of-state colleges, absolutely. That's that's what we do. Now, some of the super high selective colleges, they may not offer merit scholarships. They will offer income-based. So if you qualify for the need-based financial aid, then you could still get financial aid. But those ones do not offer merit scholarships. So it depends. That's why the college list, it's super important for, that is an art. We have to make that college list very carefully because each school has a different policy. So we want to make sure that the college list fits the financial needs of your family. That's the crux of that part of it. Do you partner with any mentor programs? How do you recommend? Jason, we do partner with mentor programs, but we only recommend them once we've gotten to know the student. We have done extensive research to find the absolute best mentor programs, but we only recommend those that fit with a student's ideal strategy. We're not going to just, say, do this, do that. No, it's got to really fit with your timeline and your strategy. Okay. One more, it's 7:01. I know we have to go, but Alexandria, this is an interesting question. Is it worth becoming valedictorian? So, yeah, think about how many high schools there are in the United States, right? How many valedictorians are there applying to certain spots in college? Now, I'm not saying don't be a valedictorian, please. If that is your ambition, you should absolutely go for it. But remember that, there are some interesting statistics about that. Being valedictorian is not going to guarantee admission to the most highly ranked colleges in the country. It's just not. So you'll need other things too, right? But certainly your academic performance is at the top of their list, right? The rigor of your classes at the top of the selection categories, and your rank does come into play because colleges can only admit a certain number of students from each school. That's the reality of the situation. So there's no easy answer to that, but I applaud you for thinking about it. Well, this is all we have time for. Thank you so much for coming to this webinar. And if you still have questions and you feel that you're interested in working with us, please sign up. I think in the chat, Leslie has pasted the link. And and basically, I wish you a wonderful application process. And I wish you all joy in your learning journey and in your life. Thank you so much.